Angus, I like the way their faces are ringed with hair. Whoa, hey!
That was amazing.
God.
The Uncharted series is the crown jewel of modern-day Sony consoles from renowned developer Naughty Dog. While the games have always received incredibly high praise, I usually never made it past the 3-hour mark for various reasons. The release of Uncharted 4, A Thief's End for the PlayStation 4 still remains a benchmark for the power of the console and could be considered by many to be the best console exclusive title out there. It was also the first Uncharted game I truly enjoyed. I was so engrossed by the locations, characters, and action set pieces that I played through it in just a couple days. So when it was announced that a spin-off standalone game would be released just a year after the release of 4, I feared I wouldn't be up to the challenge of climbing random surfaces yet again. Luckily, Naughty Dog have proved themselves with this bite-sized adventure that is larger than life in a way that only they can pull off. What's great about Lost Legacy being a spin-off is you honestly don't need to have any experience with the franchise. In fact, if you've never played an Uncharted game, you'll probably enjoy this one even more. The Lost Legacy opens on Chloe Fraser, who series veterans should recognize from the 2009 game Uncharted 2 Among Thieves as Nathan Drake's romantic interest and thieving rival, as she walks through a market in India. Right off the bat, Naughty Dog injects a lot of heart into the game as we are greeted by a young, charismatic girl running a shop while her dad is off fighting in the civil war currently raging on. With the girl's help, we sneak onto a truck and our adventure begins. Shortly after this, we meet the second hero of our story while exploring the creepy alleys of India. As we make our way to the roof of a building crawling with guards, we meet Nadine Ross, who players of Uncharted 4 know as the mercenary that was working with Rafe Adler. While not everyone may love the idea of playing nice with a series villain, the game does a great job of personifying her quickly. As we jump through the neon-covered rooftops, we learn of Chloe and Nadine's objective, to collect the tusk of Ganesh before the main bad guy Asav, who plans to use the value of it to fund his civil war.
We'll throw ourselves out.
This is the typical plot of an Uncharted game, but where Lost Legacy really shines is in its little moments, with conversations that could be missed altogether. After escaping Asav, we open on Chloe and Nadine driving into the Western Ghats, which appears to be Naughty Dog trying their hand at Breath of the Wild style exploration. You are given a beautiful chunk of land and a map that gives you one objective. When you get to the tower, you are given several more objectives marked on the map. Each of these locations are unique in their structures and puzzles, but since they are smaller in scope, you never really get bored.
It's Ganesh.
Hello, sir.
Right. Let's turn the water on.
Whoa, what's to say it's not different this time? What if it's fire or something?
You're messing with me.
I'm totally messing with you.
As you drive between them, you get a lot of exposition about Chloe and Nadine, with mentions of previous adventures and new information that helps pad them out as more believable characters. Where this open world really shines is if you decide to do an optional quest where you are tasked with collecting 11 tokens scattered throughout the land. Each one of these token locations has a small puzzle that is unlike anything else seen anywhere in the game. The puzzles can be as complicated as ringing several bells at the same time, or as simple as blowing up a wall with a grenade. This section is honestly the thing that makes this game's existence so necessary. The Uncharted series has always been incredibly closed off, and is strictly a linear narrative where you're expected to keep moving forward to get to the next big thing to climb or blow up. The Western Ghats shows the game's director had faith in the team to 1. Write great banter between two unique characters. 2. Have the voice actors able to make this banter believable.
Well, I haven't been to the States.
Really?
Yeah, well, the stuff I'm looking for is usually old, right? The US was only founded a couple of 100 years ago.
3. Design interesting and original puzzles that feel rewarding. And 4. Keep things interesting by having enemies cycle in. While these might sound like obvious goals in any game, these are all things that previous Uncharted games have struggled to do. I could and hope to see Naughty Dog taking what they've learned from designing this area into future games, whether it be Last of Us 2, the inevitable Uncharted 5, or something new entirely. Collecting these tokens is completely optional, and the reward is just something that makes finding treasure easier, so it's more about the journey and maybe not as much about the destination. Though, with this item, we see one of the few interesting implementations of the DualShock 4's light bar, having a change color as you get closer to treasure. After getting through this area, it's a lot of familiar Uncharted staples. Eye-popping visuals, heart-pounding destruction, and plenty of quips to keep you laughing. There are many puzzles sprinkled throughout the game, most of which are original and interesting, some of which are original, interesting, and infuriating, but the difficulty could stem from my impatience. I've always viewed the combat of the Uncharted series as a bit of a sore spot, but with every entry it seems to get better. Lost Legacy seems to design its areas for stealth, which is still the most fun way for me to play personally. Anytime I try my hand at some crazy action moment, it usually ends in my quick death. Another improvement made to the combat is Nadine's help as your buddy. Previous Naughty Dog games always seem to have buddies with flaky AI that don't really seem to be much help. At times, Nadine will tag team enemies with you in really cool combat sequences, and she seems to have great aim when firing her gun. Outside of combat, she will also help you complete objectives, like randomly flipping a switch needed to solve a puzzle, or giving you a hint to solve your own puzzle.
What's the trick here?
What? Looked like a button.
Yeah, I just wanted you to have a go at something.
Moments like these continue to make Nadine feel like a wholly realized character. The game takes us through more incredible locations with the typical story beats, but the narrative does have a few surprises that I don't want to spoil for anyone. As much as I enjoyed this game, I still had some minor grievances. I don't really understand why games are still including lockpick minigames. It's such an annoying break from the action, especially when it's as simple a minigame as this one. I actually thought the developers were making a joke about games that use lockpicking minigames. In an early scene where Nadine smashes her way in while you pick the lock, but there were still plenty of locks to be picked throughout the game. As you continue your travels, Chloe takes photos of beautiful scenery. This basically acts as a collectible, and many photo ops could be missed completely. While these photo moments are great, I really wish the game would let you have control over the taking of the photo. This is especially surprising considering the game has such an insanely robust photo mode that I spent way too much time in. The writers clearly did a lot of research on Indian culture and Hindu legends, and I appreciate how intelligent Chloe was and how often she shared nuggets of information.
What is it?
Ancient Kannada script. Looks like stanzas. Could be poetry.
This place a library?
Seems so.
I wish the treasure found throughout the game had the same effort put into it. Adding bits of information, even just a sentence describing or explaining what you found, would make searching for them much more rewarding. My only other complaint was that I felt the music was pretty one note. Themes that were appropriate for the setting, but nothing that really stuck with me. That's not to say it's bad. The composer delivered on setting the scene. I've just yet to be captivated by a game's soundtrack like I was with The Last of Us's. With the exception of the open world portion at the beginning of the game and the insane ending of the game, most of the middle of Lost Legacy is typical Uncharted gameplay. What makes me enjoy this game more than Thief's End is the fact that Lost Legacy just keeps moving and is over in about 8 hours, depending on the player. I actually sat and just played through the entire game, which is something I could never imagine doing in a game with this sort of budget. Thief's End took me around 20 hours to finish, but the game really dragged for me, and by the end, I just wanted it to be over. I played through Lost Legacy in a single sitting and enjoyed pretty much every minute of it. I really love shorter games, and until this point, you rarely see big studios like Naughty Dog making them. Obviously, you have people whining that 7 hours of gameplay isn't worth $40, but that conversation is a serious waste of time. If you spend your life trying to equate the value a piece of media has based on the amount of time you spend with it, you clearly don't know how to spend your time to begin with. But people who complain about this are also likely the people who don't see video games as art, and instead view them as something that is strictly made to entertain them. I really hope, moving forward, we see more developers, like Naughty Dog, putting this kind of effort into shorter games that are just as big of experiences.
Huh? Worth it?
Impressive.